one of the sort of sleeping, what is it? Sleeping giant, sleeping bear, whatever it is. One of the things we got to keep an eye on for 2024 that's not really in the public discourse that much is that Nintendo is supposedly releasing their next piece of hardware, the Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it ends up being called. This thing is going to be very interesting to watch because right now the Switch still sells really well. There's a lot of, people that go out and buy it for the holidays for their kids or whatever. It's just a good like parent to child device. But the core gaming audience, if you're going to get one, you already own a Switch. And there's no reason to buy a new one right now because the new one's going to be coming out soon and you don't know if it's going to be cross compatible. So it's just not really worth the trouble. So people have not really touched it. However, they are headed into the next generation of their hardware, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Nintendo Switch 2, everything we know. Nintendo is probably gearing up to announce its next console. Here's what we know so far. After 7 years on the market, which can I just say, I feel so old, man. I remember when they announced it, and then like everybody wanted one, so everybody was rushing out to try and buy one, and it was sold out everywhere. When I got my Nintendo Switch, I remember I was like calling around, and like I can't remember if I had the day off of work or what, or maybe I like made up an excuse to leave work to go and do this. Maybe it was over my lunch break or something. I don't know, something like that. But I was calling around constantly while I was working as a janitor, and I was trying to find a place that had one in stock. And I called one guy at Target one day, and he was like, oh yeah, we do have some Switches in. We got 2 in, like on the truck, but they're going to be sold within the next hour. He's like, but next week, just know these have only been coming in, I think he said like Tuesday evenings. So he's like, if you come in first thing on like Wednesday, you should be able to get one. Just, maybe call ahead and we'll tell you if we have one in stock. It's like, okay. So Wednesday comes around again, and I called him, and he's like, yep, we do have 2, but there is a guy checking out with the first one right now. So there's 1 left. I can't promise it's going to still be here when you get here because I can't hold it for anybody, but yeah, there's 1. I was like, okay. So I hopped in my car, my 1996 Volvo station wagon that looked like a hearse. I jumped in that thing and I drove over, and I like got out of my car. I'm like quickly kind of like half jogging into Target, and I go inside and make a sharp left turn, and I'm going towards the tech section. And then I see over my shoulder another man. Like, I don't know, he may look maybe like early 30s, a bigger dude, but he's also walking very quickly, following right behind me. I was like, I think he's coming for it too. I think he's trying to get it. So I like kind of pick up my speed, and I start walking even faster. And like he starts walking a little bit faster, and we're just going and going and going and going and going. And then finally I get to the counter. I'm like, do you have the Nintendo Switch in stock still? I want it. And they're like, yep, we got the last one. And he reaches down, pulls it out of the little like glass thing that they had, and sets it up on the counter. And the guy that was behind me, he comes up, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was probably something like, is that the last one? Yeah, that's the last one. Damn it. And then he just walks away. I felt kind of bad, but I was able to get it. And so I got that Switch, and I felt so cool with it, and I loved it. And it was like also at a time where like, I think it was like the first console, 2016. I think I got that before I even had a PS4. Because I think the PS4 I got late 2016 with like one of my first YouTube checks. I think the YouTube check was like $400 or $500 or something. And it would have been like accumulating for 6 months or a year or something. So it had been like forever, and it'd take me to get to that level. But I felt so cool to finally have that much money that I could buy this console. And I bought it for like $299 at Best Buy, and it was bundled with Uncharted 4. And I went to like the discount bin, and I got like Bloodborne for $10, and I got a couple of other games for $10 a piece. And so I got like the latest console with the biggest games. The original Last of Us was one of them. And I think it was all together like $330 or something for everything. I felt so cool. It's been crazy successful, the original console. And after they got their supply chain issues sorted out, it started to do really well. People just were obsessed with it. The games were solid. They got third-party support. And Nintendo's really got, I don't know if it was brilliance or if it was a mix of luck and brilliance, but there was a real desire from gamers to have a handheld portable device that could play games. And it's been fascinating because like since the Steam Deck came out and the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go and all these other handheld devices, the Switch as a third-party gaming device has kind of died off. Like it can play 360 games okay, and a couple of like PS4, Xbox One games barely. Like The Witcher 3 on Switch is laughably bad. It looks like somebody just took a handful of Vaseline and slathered it all over the screen. Like it looks terrible, but it technically runs. However, now if you want to play those games, you just get a Steam Deck and you can play it in much better quality on the Steam Deck, or you just get your ROG Ally and it runs great on the ROG Ally. So the Switch as that third-party portable device is not that viable anymore. And I don't think it's going to be that viable in the sequel version. So I think that if they tried to frame it that way, that's going to be a mistake, because I think a lot of people are just going to, if they want to play like Red Dead 2 on the go, they're just going to go buy an ROG Ally or a Legion Go or something like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they figure this out. They say that Digital Foundry reported that the Switch 2 may use NVIDIA's new custom variant T239 processor. The site compiled a PC based on what it believed the Switch's 2 specs would be, or could be, and found that it could capably run Death Stranding at 1080p with an average of 35 FPS. Now, bear in mind, Death Stranding is a PS4 game. So, like, it can run a PS4 game at HD at 30 to 35 FPS. This is not probably going to be like, no shocker, it's not going to be running like modern games, okay? It just won't. But that's always been the case with Nintendo. They just are always kind of a generation behind in terms of power, but it doesn't really matter because their games are really good and really well optimized. So it's not that big of a deal, but still. Nintendo's previous consoles had their own account systems, and players had to create new accounts for subsequent hardware launches, but the new overarching Nintendo account changes this, and this could help ease the transition for and to the next Nintendo console. Quote, it allows us to communicate with our players if and when we make a transition to a new platform to help ease that process of a transition. Our goal is to minimize the dip you typically see in the last year of one cycle and the beginning of another. I can't speak to the possible features of a new platform, but the Nintendo account is a strong basis for having that communication as we make the transition. A lot of this sounds to me like they're going to have cross-platform or cross-generational support. So games that worked on your original Switch will work on your Switch 2 or whatever it's called day one, which I think is a huge boon. Like just the ability to maybe play Tears of the Kingdom like upscaled when it's docked to like 1440p or 4K, that to me is compelling. A much better display, better battery life, a Joy-Con that doesn't constantly disconnect. That would be great. That'd be great. So that's a potential, inference you can make from this. If they don't have Nintendo Switch game support on this new console, that will be such a huge blunder. I will be amazed. But anyway, they continue. When will it be announced? They have no indication as of yet, but some have predicted the announcement could be tied to Nintendo's fiscal year. Nintendo's new financial year begins on April 1st, so some are expecting an announcement just before then to help pump the stock price and generate momentum heading into the next quarter. Nintendo's share price recently reached a record high, and some are expecting even stronger results ahead if Nintendo does in fact announce new hardware soon. Yeah. If they announce it and the response is really, really positive, maybe in late March, that could be really cool. As for when will it launch, the thing with these, like they have to manufacture millions, tens of millions of these. And whenever I just try to visualize how many that is, because a factory or multiple factories are putting these together. Like they're assembling them, putting them in their boxes, and then they have to set those on a shelf somewhere in a warehouse, waiting to be shipped off to be sold to people. It's very hard to keep that secret. It just is. And they have to build these things typically close to the announcement, as long as they're not announcing and then waiting a year. Even the iPhone, in the next month or two, we're going to start to see early manufacturing prototypes and case prototypes and stuff for the iPhone 16, because they have to get started 6 months ahead of time to have enough units to sell millions and millions of them across the world when they launch in September. So with these hardware launches, some people are I think they'll announce it in March and sell it in April or something like that. It's it just doesn't really work that way if you want to avoid spoilers and leaks. For the iPhone, it's at this point, it's inevitable that stuff will leak. So they just have kind of embraced it. They manufacture, they announce, release it 2 weeks later, whatever. People are going to see it early. It's whatever. It's going to happen. If they really don't want leaks to happen, they'll do it like the Vision Pro, and they'll announce it with prototypes that very few people have ever seen. Nothing will really leak specifically about the device visually or the components of it because it hasn't entered manufacturing, and they'll manufacture it months afterwards, closer to launch, to avoid those leaks from happening. But I think the Switch, they probably announce it, and then like 6 months later is when the actual thing launches. I think they probably take their time. I mean, what they say specifically in this, recently a September 24 release date for the Switch 2 emerged in an official press release from the newest interaction of GameShark, but it's probably not legitimate, so who knows. One theory is that Nintendo might look to release the Switch 2 in the first half of the year so that any potential stock shortages could be sorted out before the ever-important holiday shopping season when Nintendo wants to have ample supply in the market. That's true, but it's also, it's just really hard to gauge the interest because this isn't just a whole new device that could generate a lot of hype. It seems like it's going to be more of like a Nintendo 3DS to the DS. Hardcore fans will want it, but it's probably not going to be the same level of crazy, like, oh, it's the latest and greatest. It's probably going to still look kind of like a Switch. It's not going to be that shockingly different. So I'm not sure if the demand will be that crazy high, but the one exception to this would be the games, because the games are what tend to sell this hardware. And a lot of people have just assumed that they're going to be coming out swinging with some launch titles, which the Switch was kind of blessed with Breath of the Wild as a launch title, because that game, of course, many people called it one of the greatest games of all time. I still would insist with that. Tears of the Kingdom makes it look like a demo, which is even more shocking. But at the time, it definitely was like, it earned that 10 out of 10, in my opinion. That being said, that was like the one game because later they brought like Mario Kart 8. They brought all these Wii U games to the Switch, but they were Wii U games just ported over. So they haven't really made a standalone Mario Kart since then. They brought Smash Bros, to be fair, and I would imagine that they bring that day one as well, and that's an easy layup. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Mario Odyssey, that came out was it like 6 months afterwards, or was that also a launch title? I don't remember that one. I think it came out around holiday. I don't know. It's been a minute, but it's okay. However, it's pretty much widely expected at this point that Nintendo will release a new Mario Kart game, brand new, not a Wii U version, a brand new one for the next console. A report said that Mario Kart 9 will have some kind of new quote-unquote twist, and fans are eagerly awaiting to see what that might be. If a new Mario Kart game is in the works, it would seemingly make business sense for it to be a launch title for the next console. A report from 2023 said a number of developers already had the new Nintendo console at their offices and were beginning to build games for it, but none have been announced or even hinted at thus far. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if they were trying to get day one support. It would make sense that they would send out dev kits already. So that makes sense. Will it be backwards compatible? Major question many fans want to know is whether it will be backwards compatible. We don't know. Nintendo's previous systems, like the Nintendo statements about the Nintendo account systems carrying forward to the next system, might suggest Nintendo is going to offer some level of backwards compatibility. One theory floated by a former Nintendo employee is that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible with digital eShop games, which could be interesting. I think it's a great way to piss a lot of people off if they change how the cartridge system works, because I bought a lot of games with cartridges. And if they're saying you'll be able to use eShop games, but you won't be able to use games you bought physically, that sucks. That would blow. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. Yeah, it's only digital copies if that's the case. I don't know if they're going to use the same kind of cartridge system for the new console, or if they're going to do some other route, or maybe this is an entirely digital console. Who knows? Maybe they go that route and just piss everybody off. You just never really know. You never really know. But as for whether that would be like a death knell for them, I don't think so. I think, Nintendo fans will always buy their consoles, even when they kind of suck. Like the Wii U still sold millions of units. The Wii U ended its run with 13.56 million units sold. There's 13 million Wii U's out there. And that was widely considered to be a disaster. So even if it's not that crazy successful compared to like the Switch, which has sold 130 million units and more than 1 billion copies of games. Not even close. It's still 13 million copies. You know, it's still sold a lot. Not anywhere near as much as they wanted or needed, but still sold a lot. That being said, I mean, if they don't do backwards compatibility, I'll be very, very surprised, because it just seems like a layup. Like, oh, you have day one, a huge library of games available for your console, which is the, like, it's the common problem for launch games or for consoles when they launch, is that they don't have launch titles. They don't have games that justify you spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the console to get day one, because you might have one decent game, but there's nothing really to compel you. It's like, for me, the one thing that really killed the PSVR 2 is that they released the PSVR 2. They had one game basically day one that was really exclusive, which was the Horizon VR game that got like a 7 out of 10 score from most outlets and journalists. Everybody was like, it's fine, but it's just kind of like a little demo. It really doesn't feel like a game. And after that, they've like barely supported the damn thing because they didn't sell many units. So they're like, we don't want to spend too much money on it because barely anybody has a PSVR 2. It's like, yeah, nobody has it because there's no games for it. So it's like the back and forth stalemate where nobody wants to take the first step to buy the headset because there's no games, but there's no games because nobody has a headset. So it just doesn't end up going anywhere. And the Switch struggled with this too initially. Like for the Switch, it was just tough because they had Breath of the Wild, and that was kind of it. Once you finished Breath of the Wild, there really was nothing to use your Switch for like 6 months. It was rough. Am I going to buy the Apple Vision Pro?